Hi, my name is Kristen Chrisman. It's been a long time, 5 months, since my last video. I hope you've all been well. I'd like to read a poem that I wrote 8 years ago called Mother's Day. I revised it a little bit yesterday, added some stanzas and changed a few. And I'd like to read it in honor of International Women's Day on the 8th. I hope you like it. If we could see a Mother's Day all around the world, where mothers lived a day of joy, where mothers felt their worth, then what exactly would we see so moms could realize that their lives are important and their own perspectives wise? The women in Sudan would not be flogged for wearing pants. Their spirits wouldn't be constrained. They'd run, skip, sing, and dance. In Arabia, we'd celebrate no groping of the girls. They'd drive their cars with elbows bare, show ankles under skirts. As golden rays of morning light touched arms tanned from the sun, brown locks of hair blown by the breeze from scarves could come undone. And no false blame on women for attracting hands of men, as if the hands were victims of the evil feminine. Instead of yoking women, telling them they have to hide, the men without firm self-control would wear handcuffs outside. And stiff Wahhabi thoughts of us as temptresses dirt smeared would turn around, go upside down till women were revered. We'd hear collapsed beliefs that virgins wait up in the sky to welcome men who've torn apart the hearts of countless lives. For women would not see the sense in violence or the use of bombs, explosions, grief, and death with God as an excuse. Then over in Afghanistan, car bombings and grenades against the women working for their rights would quickly fade. Invading U.S. troops would never claim to liberate the women whose permission they did scorn until too late. No Afghan women gave the U.S. clearance to invade or bomb her family with the words their freedom was at stake. It's just hypocrisy to state that women's rights need war when no one asks the women which solutions they prefer. Iranians, for their part, would forbid torture and hate towards prisoners. They'd end abuse of wives, victims of mates. And Pakistani mothers giving birth would have the aid of female nurses from their land who've been to school and trained. Then as their infants grew in age, they'd find joy escalate from playground slides and jungle gyms, from swimming rollerblades. As youth needing adventure, they'd not turn to violent games. Instead, they learn gymnastics, parachute, ski, climb, and skate. And as adults out searching for a high-purpose, noble life, they tie their passion to nonviolent action without strife. Down south in Congo, women would be safe from savage harm, their sons and husbands never forced to kidnap, kill, bear arms. Traditions that insist a wife accept pain from her mate would be replaced by cell phones to report him and escape. And food crops would replace cash crops so families could eat. And women would not eat what's left from men, but with them eat. Cold darkness that compels some men to kill for treasured mines would change to light so they could see that deadly greed's unkind. And what use is the gain of wealth when all that it's used for is purchasing more guns to fuel a war for wealth, for war? The violence in Nigeria, the suffering on all sides, from lack of prosecution, no defense of human rights, the oil spills from old pipelines that the owners won't clean up, polluting land and water, leaving natives without much, the poverty and homelessness and baseless, cruel arrests that place 1,000 on death row, no fair trials or defense. On Mother's Day, if this could all completely change around, we might set up good habits and not spirals going down. In India, no woman would get acid on her face from men who feel superior but are debased by hate. When hierarchy is intrinsic to a culture's mind, it's hard to see one's dominating habits all the time. And South Koreans would not let a thirst for alcohol fuel murder, robbery, assault, and take a morbid toll. The South Korean woman would not mimic Western eyes and cheat herself with surgery that cuts where beauty lies. High in Nepal, the women who have skills to mediate would not be kept from peace talks by men who just debate. And women healers never would be stoned for their witchcraft. Holistic ways cure even without numbers, charts, and graphs. While medicalized knowledge of the body may be right, the inattention to the whole leaves gaps in our insight. Just as the mediator should not solve our problems by descending bombs and missiles down to quench unfriendly fire, the healer cannot fix sickness by simply cutting out the portion of the body that has fever, fat, or gout. For problems in the world cannot be fixed by killing lives, and problems in our bodies need much more than drugs and knives. Frustrations in relations, time in nature, or at jobs, the feeling that we're trapped somehow, our life dreams have been robbed. How are these matters making us unhealthy or unkind? Do they bring out the worst in us, or bring us peace of mind? The system whole must be observed to see what causes what, or else the complications will remain all tangled up. For enemies, just like disease, are symptoms. Something's wrong. Repair what does provoke them, and you'll build a friendship strong. Domestic violence in Ukraine and Russia would abate. Emotions causing violence we would soothe, alleviate. The moms of Russia and Ukraine would happily resolve. The non-violent solutions are the only ones allowed. And U.S. diplomats would never send their weapons to a foreign land with promises they'd rescue women who would rather that the U.S. kept its guns all to itself, but never have a democratic voice to say enough. For women know, as men do too, that weapons only make the grievances provoking war grow worse and escalate. PTSD, anxiety, cold terror, and despair are fated to the nation's force-fed U.S. arms warfare. Across the sea in Mexico, no woman would depend upon her husband for her wealth, nor for her self-respect. Each woman could afford to hire help within the home. Poor moms need not tend children of the rich, but raise their own. The self-worth felt within each man would not rely upon the games of domination over men and wives and sons. And men and women all as one could build a wall against the U.S. weapon exports pushed upon them without rest. The YU of Colombia could live without alarm that families will be massacred with holes from bullet swarms by men who from the government, police, and private thugs seize for themselves the coast for fossil fuels and smuggling drugs. And work for human rights in countries like El Salvador would not be targeted by groups who profit more from war than in the mid-Pacific, where the natives are in grief, kept out of sacred land that is now Navy property. Hawaiian native women would return to visit land of ancient gods and goddesses test-bombed by U.S. planes. The toxins in Pearl Harbor dumped as military waste would all be cleaned so fish could breathe and beauty not erased. In U.S. stores we'd witness magazines and DVDs without preoccupations with female anatomy. We wouldn't cover a woman and reveal only her eyes, nor lay her bare for all to see cheap flesh demeaning lives. And all strip clubs would be stripped down, their women given jobs, positions of great dignity, not work for two-faced slobs. We'd recognize that women, whether shrouded or displayed, have hearts and minds that are submerged in culture's one-track ways. And shackled wisdom of our land from cultures that were free would resurrect itself, a gift for all humanity. Lakota mothers and Dene would finally realize a family life without despair, depression, suicide. Full bonds with nature, spirit sparked, again community. No disconnection with the heart, the spirit, mind, body. With hunger gone, no poverty, the chance to regain rights. No need to turn to drink and drugs when meaning's back in life. On Mother's Day, we'd recognize, confirm equality between the genders, age, and class, at work and families. We'd pay the waitress, teacher, nurse, and secretary too, a wage much higher than those who sell weapons, drugs, and fuel. For weapon sales would be exposed as selfish business games, to not resolve but push for war with profits as the aim. And alcohol's dog roll and death, so many homicides, would firmly be acknowledged and its sale not be advised. We'd help the homeless, feed the poor, and not expect one class to serve the needs of higher-ups while their needs pass unmet. Our presidents, their spouses, would not sport designer dress. Instead, they'd pay a good wage to a hungry poor seamstress. And males and females would maintain reciprocal respect. Girls would not hurt and put down boys. Boys would not girls reject. The women wouldn't serve beneath the men in any church or mosque or synagogue as if their spirits had less worth. Yet women who are leaders would gain power not because their vicious qualities have replaced caring, joy, and love. For in the workforce people would lead democratic lives and not be trampled by a boss, cold tyrant, warm disguise. For if we're a democracy but plod to work each day in fiefdoms of a monarchy with meager voice and pay, how can we then experience the feeling that we're free, where each voice is of value and we're cared for equally? On Mother's Day, our care for kids would not be thrown between the cooking, dishes, laundry, but receive deserved esteem. And raising children would be viewed as life's most precious role, requiring endless love and time, a giving of the soul. We wouldn't raise our children to crave power more than love, beat, scold, and dominate them to instill a fear of us. For how we treat them now will lead to future consequence. If we want loving adults, then to start with us makes sense. If we want men to love their wives, we'd better love our sons, and not raise them to hate themselves without love, joy, and fun. For if a boy learns to relate in terms of fear's control, he'll see no other choice but domination when he's old. Over his wife, over his friends, the pattern will run deep. He'll dominate all foreigners and those of other creeds. If he learns that his status and his wealth are paramount, he'll only strive for power, thinking love and joy don't count. On Mother's Day, life would be more than time for work and chores. We'd all have time for hobbies, pets, and for the wild outdoors. We wouldn't split the family with each member heading for a different job, a school, and reuniting not before. The gloaming, when at last they come, fatigued from weary days, with little energy for love, no spark to laugh or play. The schools would open later and give children needed sleep, instead of living days fatigued like uncharged batteries. Instead of tests and punishments, class sizes would be small, for learning grows when love has time to help scared kids grow tall. With so much sadness, so much hate, the question should not cease. Should needs for academics so eclipse our need for peace? For while a core of knowledge can do wonders for our world, there comes a point where more class time and homework are absurd. So class time would be cut in half. The children could unwind and wade in brooks and skip some stones, ride horses, jump and climb. And those kids who prefer more school could happily remain. For teachers' help, class, clubs, and gym, a half day freely gained. But if the light of freedom is snuffed out from children's days, before too long the zest to care for learning fades away. For while those lacking schools may have much thirst to learn at will, when schools are overwhelming, overload can make us ill. And while we pay much money to insurance industries, We'd probably have better health if things like this could be. On Mother's Day, life would not be a selfish race for pay, for grades, for profits, numbers, but a time to care and play. And on that day, our children would be more than cogs and wheels that turn the global marketplace and work for others' deals. Pursuing values that should never be priorities of militarized space, control, greed, wealth, and vanity. For when demands on children and adults do prove too much, and replace joy and love with stress, our wisdoms turn to dust. And while the bell curve's going up, our culture may seem sound, but when the excess leads to grief, we plummet to the ground. Then suddenly, in Europe, all the ancient toppled shrines of Mother Earth the goddess would be righted, unconfined. And Mother Earth would take her place above all human beings, not subject to harsh vagaries of man-made deities. We'd recognize the beauty of the earth without the stains of human excavation mines and highways multi-laned. We'd shun atomic energy and fuels of fossils too, abhor their deathly toxins and their ugly residues. Before invading Arctic lands, they'd ask us if it's wise to drill for fossil fuels that are the cause of melting ice. Before constructing one new road or store or parking lot, they'd ask us if we mind yet one more shattered habitat. The population, we'd reverse the growth to smaller size. No goddess would intend for us to live while all else dies. With Mother Earth as goddess, we would fervently exclaim that land is much too beautiful to spoil and profane, with bombs and blood of those who in war's unholy pursuit believe their cause is nobler than the earth that they pollute. The painting of the mother with tears streaming down her cheeks, who bravely hugs her son goodbye to play war's drumming beat. We'd paint that over to reveal the wisdom of her heart in knowing that her child should stay and not for war depart. Sons would not be conscripted nor be registered for war, to lose the very freedom they allegedly fight for, to serve in war by force within a nation labeled free, enticed to register with offers of college degrees, is lower than a nation proud should shamelessly descend, while undermining promises of freedom in the end. For what true good can come of war if it recycles hate and falsely teaches lessons that our foes deserve their fate? If we learn that the enemies are lacking in remorse, our conscience never pricks us when we kill with total force. If we learn that the enemies cannot be understood, and that we would not be like them if in their shoes we stood, then we won't know a mother's love for all her children round. We'll never learn the view from in the sky when looking down upon us all, our faults and strengths, how we antagonize each other and then claim we're right, the other misaligned. To see all of our weaknesses as faults to meet with love, to see through hatred to the fear, and through that to mistrust. If children cheat, use drugs, or lie, a mother still can see the goodness in them, and just why such problems are conceived. To kill or stun with taser guns just escalates the stress, when what the victim needs the most is love and peacefulness. To bomb them, hate them, does no good. It's better patiently to kindly guide them to the sun, for they have faults like we. To bolster war, believe in hate, is blasphemy to her, the mother god, the goddess, who's now crushed beyond all words. Yes, cards and flowers mean so much, but it would mean much more to share a planet where love reigned and beauty, peace, not war. Until events like these arise, I'll know that Mother's Day is shallow consolation for a world not gone her way. Thank you. The dolls behind me are part of my international doll collection that I began when I was 5 years old. That was my first experience with the international, with dolls as friends. And I think the ideal is what we need, not the what's called realpolitik, not the fear, the prejudice, the rivalry. We need to look first as friends at others. The 33 dolls and I, we wish you a happy International Women's Day.